Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke has defended the methodology used to calculate South Africa's unemployment figures. This is after Capitec CEO Gerrie Fourie called on the government to rethink the unemployment statistics, suggesting the figure could be 10% as it does not include the informal sector. Interestingly, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Sandile, told Parliament that Fourie may be onto something. I'm now joined by political analyst Sandile Swana to unpack this. Swana, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. So this is quite interesting. I mean, the CEO of Capitec penned this article in the Business Day speaking about how those figures of that 32.9% in terms of our unemployment rate could be closer to 10%, saying that Stats SA does not account for those that are self-employed as well as those working within informal markets. How credible is a claim that not accounting for the informal sector would substantially lower our unemployment rates?
Oh, thank you so much, Katle, and good evening to your viewers. First of all, the credibility of the view experienced by Gerrie Fourie, the outgoing CEO of Capitec, and supported by Sandile, is wrong, totally 100% wrong, unscientific, and needs to be rejected. Number two, any businessman or any citizen and politician who needs to gain quick insight into the statistics, employment statistics in South Africa, must actually contact the Bureau of Economic Research at the University of Stellenbosch. Otherwise, Professor Harun Borat at the University of Cape Town and Stats SA, as well as the CSIR, where they are excellent statisticians, to get a basic grip on how the discipline of statistics work, and then also the discipline of labor economics works. So the comments by Sandile made me to go and check his CV as to where he studied and to whether he might have somehow encountered any of these disciplines I've mentioned that are necessary, labor economics and statistics. And I have a strong suspicion that he has never encountered such. And he should stop speculating about such matters. Now, another point to consider is that any area, village even, in South Africa, you can actually get a village-specific unemployment rate. So if you wanted to know whether the statistic in a group of villages, let's say Royal Bafokeng, whatever it is, whether those statistics are accurate, you can quickly get students from the University of Northwest. If you are Gerrie Fourie, put them in your combi and go and check, then double-check the statistic of Stats SA, and you'll quickly determine that the stats are actually correct. So lastly, he made inferences according to his opinion, according to what he thinks is the cash flowing in certain areas. And in fact, by counting cash in some way that we don't know exactly, counting cash rather than counting the actual people, then he makes inferences that so many of those people are actually employed in that area. Stats SA counts the actual people. Thank you.
So you don't think that we're understating the influence of the informal sector?
I don't need to think about that. These are hard facts. There is a method that is followed. For instance, ADCOP came up with this idea or using a similar methodology to Gerrie Fourie. And the next thing, you find that the calculation, as Dumakubula says, that they are people who are employed were bigger than the population. So when you use wrong methods, you come with ridiculous figures. So we count, Stats SA will tell you that when you are measuring unemployment, you must first of all say, this is the age group, 15 to 64. Then you also know the general population as a whole, how many people in the population as a whole who are in this age group. The minute you get people who are employed who are higher than the number of the people in the population, you know that your methodology is incorrect. Or in a given village, the number who are employed, they are bigger than the population of that village. It tells you that your methodology is incorrect. So there are 4 different types of surveys that are done cross-verifying the number of people who are involved in the informal sector, the number of people who are self-employed, as well as the people who are employed, and so on and so forth. So there is no prospect whatsoever that the numbers that are offered by Stats SA, which are used in all the major universities to teach students labor economics, are wrong. The numbers are actually correct. And you must sit at home and read the reports, 4 reports, and finish reading them and understanding them before making this type of comment.
Well, I mean, Stats Gen also speaks about the influence that industry leaders have in making such statements with regards to whether or not our statistics are correct. How do you think policymakers as well as analysts should approach these, especially government officials such as the Minister of Trade and Industry, especially when it comes to these differing narratives when designing their interventions for such issues?
I'll start off by making a political statement and a theological statement, 2 statements. The first one is that South Africa is plagued by the politics of the stomach. The stomach in South Africa has been elevated, and part of that is that people with money have now been elevated to gods. You know, people told us that everything will be right when we appoint a billionaire or multimillionaire Ramaphosa to be the president. So people, once a person has got money, he's elevated into a god in South Africa. So we listen to people not because they are well-trained, well-educated, and well-experienced, simply because they've got money, they become gods. And the Bible says they have made their stomachs their gods, and that will lead to their destruction. So South Africans need to be careful to be led by billionaires and multimillionaires who are not even well-trained to comment on topics that they know absolutely nothing about. And there is an effort right now from the ANC, the GNU, and big business to convince the unemployed African and colored communities, 92% of the population, that in actual fact, they are very prosperous, they are well-employed, they don't even need land to be restored to them, they are just doing very well and they must relax, everything is fine. And that is the net effect of what this statement by Pakstow earlier on, many years ago by Adcorp, and now by the outgoing CEO of Capitec is doing. It is cruel, unscientific, and devilish propaganda that is being put on the table, and it must not be done at all.
Well, I mean, they also speak about, I think in that article, Fourie makes a reference to a lady that sells fat cook and makes 1,000 rands a day, and that should not be considered as unemployed. The metrics and the methods that you have been speaking of throughout our conversation, and even Stats Gen also made reference in terms of them using the International Labour Organization guidelines, and that looking into whether business is registered, whether the employees within that business are registered for tax. If there's less than 5 employees within that business, it's then classified as informal, and those people would also be classified as unemployed. Do you think we need to start designing metrics that speak directly to our landscape as South African, the way we do things culturally when it comes to labor and economics?
I don't know which cultural thing we're talking about, because the statistics between India, if you want to talk about culture, nations like India are top-notch. You know, you have nations like Kenya, Swaziland, and so on. Statistics between countries must be comparable. So then it will be hours. How many hours? In the survey, Padili Hutla explained this, that we even say, do you work in a week? Do you work 2 hours? Do you work so many hours? So all of that data is calibrated and classified. So if there's a particular category that you want to study, you can actually find it in the statistics. So I do not think any one of us should comment before finishing reading the 4 reports that are different reports that actually corroborate and support each other. Also, there are other reports that go beyond statistics, the reports, for instance, that measure the level of entrepreneurship in South Africa, if you want to talk about the self-employed people and other things. So I think we have to accept that what has been spoken by Pakstow, by Gerrie Fourie, and previously by Adcock, that is unscientific superstition that must not be tolerated or accommodated in any capacity whatsoever.
All right, Sandile Swana, thank you so much for your inputs and for joining us this evening. That was political analyst Sandile Swana speaking to us there about the utterances of both the Capitec CEO and the Minister of Trade and Industry about how we are looking at our unemployment stats and the exclusion of the informal sector.